Hi, I'm Charlie Matthews. I am with Empowering Brands. I'm the founder and CEO of all these empowering brands that we like to talk about. Brian Bearden, he's going to talk to us about websites and when is the last time your website brought you or helped you win a contract, right? So brought you some customers. So really excited about hearing from him. I don't know if a lot of you, probably some of you, I'll say, have seen him talk at TPS. That's where I really fell in love with his presentation. And so, again, a veteran in the marketing space. Brian, I'm excited to learn from you. I was telling them at the beginning of our day that, I met you at TPS and you were doing presentations there. And it's just part of this community that understands, like Michelle, as far as like marketing a technical product and understand our end users. And so let's talk about that. But first, let's talk about how 2020, the COVID, the economy, how does this change B2B selling and the importance of websites? I know you have tons of stuff to talk about there, so go for it.
And it really has. I mean, what's interesting about 2020 is, look at what we're doing here. We're doing it by Zoom. So where you would normally invite your customer over to your warehouse to see, as Michelle put, submersible pump, you would basically invite people over. You might invite an engineer, you might invite somebody from sales to your warehouse to look at everything. That's not happening. What's also not happening is, like in my world, OTC, the Offshore Technology Conference, was canceled. We don't know what OTC 2021 is going to look like. The Turbo Machinery Show, ILTA, all of these shows where you could actually go and touch the product and see the product has changed because now they're virtual, so it's a little bit different. I mean, with OTC, you had customers that had almost 100 by 100 type booths, huge booths where they would bring in the trucks, the fracking trucks, where you could actually see it and touch it. That's not happening anymore. I'm a past president of the Marine Technology Society for Houston. We're not having industry luncheons where we would sit at a table and get 9 other business cards. And so what's happening is where are these people going to get the information that they need? And like Michelle talked about, they're going to your website. And the question is, are they going to the website that you designed back in 2016 or 2010? Or are they going to the website that reflects who you are in November 2020?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I was just talking to somebody the other day who was talking about going to somebody's website and describing it is it black with neon blue and red? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember seeing that. And please don't have that today. If that's you, just stop right now and go work on the website, right?
Yeah, because you also have, there's people who still have these great flash intros and stuff like that. And I've been in the web development business for over 15 years. I've built those before. The worst thing that ever happened was the skip intro, and then nobody watched them anymore. And so I just redesigned a choke valve manufacturer whose whole page was basically a great flash, and it just said, this plugin doesn't work. And he was like, how come it doesn't work? And I go, because it doesn't work on mobile. It doesn't work on regular websites. You got to get this changed.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump in. If you are on this call and you are an industrial marketer, where do you get started in web design? Let's just say maybe you have a website too, right? So there's either you want to start a brand new one or you've got one. So what's the tips to get started?
Well, the first thing is you have one. And I think that's what's important is, I deal with clients who are like, oh, we should take it down. No, because the one thing you don't want people to do right now is assume. So let's say they go to your website, this one that's got either some kind of flash not working, or 6 years ago you decided you were going to blog. And so you did for a couple of blogs, and all of a sudden you stopped. And so you dated the blog. And so they get on there and they see that it's from 2015. And they're like, okay, well, wait a minute. They haven't updated the news since 2015. We have COVID. We have a tough economy. Are they still in business? And that's the last thing you want a potential customer to think. And so where would you start? And I always tell people, I go, begin with the end in mind. What's the purpose for your site? And that's the first question that I ask when I get contacted by somebody who says they want to do a website redesign is, what's the purpose for the site? And let's be specific. You know, I do on the non-destructive testing community, and I did a website for a leading company called Hawker. And when I met with Jeff Hawker, he said, I think it's time to get into e-commerce because this is where, you know, this is where my customers are wanting. And I go, okay, so we spent almost 2 months just talking about what e-commerce would be like for him versus just going ahead and designing an e-commerce site. And so what you need to do is be specific about the website. What do you want? Do you want to increase your inside sales leads? You know, like Michelle talked about SEO. Do you want to rank for specific terms? I love what she said. She said, and I wrote it down, they want to know what product will solve their problem and they'll pay anything for that. Yes, totally. If I have, you know, and it's really interesting because, you know, I deal with everybody from hose fittings, accumulators, a lot of that kind of stuff where it's all products. And so you're looking at a product and you're like, okay, I need to replace this. And they're going, okay, let me go to someone's website. And the problem you have with an outdated website is your website may not even have that product that you currently have on the site. Or if you're a distributor and you represent a good number of manufacturers, maybe half the manufacturers that you represent aren't on the current site. And so what happens is all of a sudden people are like, well, is this the company I should be talking to? And you don't want that. You get 7 seconds in the web world to make an impression, and you don't want somebody thinking, are you out of business?
Yeah, so I have some questions coming in, but I'll wait just a minute on that. I'm curious about, you know, if, you know, we look at who our customers are, we look at maybe the age of our customers, and who's retiring, and how that's going to play into, you know, what we design, or should we shift in any way to think about, you know, kind of the new job workforce. Like, what does that look like as far as building a website and figuring out that target audience? A lot of the times for me, I have multiple audiences, which I'm sure people do, but what does that look like in how you design a new site?
Well, what's happening is you have 5 generations in the workforce now, basically from like 17 years old all the way up to 80. And what's happening is we're finding is, you know, the industrial buyer, let's just call him Mel, who's been in the business like 30 or 40 years, who knows your product like the back of his hand and go, yeah, I need a accumulator, I need a such and such. The problem is he's retiring. And the person who's coming in to replace him is a college graduate with maybe 2 to 3 years of industry experience. So they don't know your product. You know, they don't know that what your choke valve does compared to somebody else. Mel did. Mel just ordered from you. And the problem with that is your website needs to address, because especially the fact that with the generation X, Y, Z, you know, I don't know what, like kind of like
them, right.
I look at it like, okay, are we going to go to the Greek alphabet, kind of like what we did with hurricanes this season? You know, I mean, because I don't know what you're going to get after Z, but the big thing about it is, you know, the industrial buyers of today don't know your products as well. And so you need, like Michelle talked about, you need content that explains to it. So you have to, when you're thinking about redesigning your website, you have to think, how educated is your buyer and how educated are they on your products? And if not, you know, give the information. You would think that, oh, they probably already know this. No, they may not. And so your website needs to address who specifically you're going after. And if that person is not knowledgeable in your product, then that's where product videos would come in. That's where, you know, good content would come in. Bullets still work very well. You know, and one of my clients was like, well, we'll just underline it. And I'm like, okay, this is something we talked about probably 10 years ago, but you don't underline online because it looks like a link. And then people click it and then they get like, why can't I just click on it and go to someplace? Because all I did was underline it. And you're like, you know, in the all caps and different colors. And so there's some things that you really want to look at, but really strategically, I mean, you know, most of the websites I design would probably not win design awards, but they make my clients a lot of money. And so the problem, because they're focused on that industrial buyer that needs the submersible pump or needs the industrial vibratory equipment. And they're specifically reaching to them. And it's okay if people come to your site and find out this is not the product they need. It's okay if people leave. You want the person who has the checkbook, who says, yes, I need that product to stay on your site and then take whatever call to action you have.
So you've got me thinking in several different areas, but I wanted to just address, and Sienna is also in the chat. So she's our content manager, and she's helped me with the website over the years too. But one of the just kind of quick questions was, if you go into the details of a site and look at like changing the date on a blog, does that affect your SEO at all? Or in the kind of Sienna's commenting that if you don't change the content, doesn't necessarily change that. But what is that effect on the date? That's a question I had, because I do these things like the virtual meetups and I change the date. I'm like, should I delete that? What should I do with that after it's kind of out of date?
Okay, well, here's one of my top tips is everybody thinks that they're going to blog every week, and they're not. So I don't date blogs, and I tell my customers not to date blogs. Now, if you're going to write something about the top tips for 2020 and it's 2023, someone's going to know that it's dated. But you don't actually have to change the date. I mean, I would actually not even do the date, to be honest. But you can repurpose content. You just don't want to do a duplicate post. So let's say, for instance, you wrote a post about some great, some great advantages of your submersible pump. You could very easily use that same content. You just want to update it for 2020. So, for the instance, there might be, and I always listen to the biggest thing is listen to your customers, because if they tell something about like, hey, this is how we use this pump, and you're like, well, great, I bet you there's some other people who might use it. I build websites so it's very easy for my clients to update themselves. So you can go in the back end of the site, add a bullet, and within 2 minutes, add that advantage to your pump page. And that's the thing. Websites should not be, and I love doing website maintenance for clients. I'm not saying that, but I mean, I would say, make sure that you can update your site yourself, or that you have somebody on call that could update it for you, because that's the thing that Google wants is, the Google wants consistent content that's always sharing, that's always updating, but your live person is coming to the site. So I always tell my customers that are really big into SEO, yes, Google will not write you checks. Google will bring you customers. What the customer does when they're on their website is what you and I as the developer do to make sure that they stay on the site and follow the path that we want them to take.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's talk about a little bit before we get into your tips. I can't wait to tell people about this. So if we're talking or thinking about our audience, we also have to think about where they are. So, today that's shifted a lot. So there are a lot of people kind of in their homes, but what if we're talking about people in the field versus people who kind of work in an office? Is there any kind of different ways to develop the site with that in mind?
Yeah, in my world, it's called responsive. We build a website so it's responsive, so that if somebody's on a tablet, a smartphone, they're at OTC and they're showing the website on a big, jumbo screen, your website should reach to them. And that's the biggest thing right now, is especially with home. I mean, you don't know if someone's on a laptop, on a large screen, or they're actually on their phone. And so your website needs to address that, but so does your call to action. So if you look at a website, and I should have done this before, but basically, if you just pull up a website and you go, basically, you're used to scrolling, on a site. And so you'll scroll all the way down. And then what I normally do is, and this is a good tip too, is I put footers on my websites. So it's just a simple bar across. And usually the left-hand column is your contact information and how to get a hold of you. The center of it is usually about a paragraph about who you are. Because with SEO, and like Michelle talked about, you may never hit the home page. You may go directly to the submersible pumps page. And if you do, then you don't know anything about pump company A, B, or C. So when you scroll down the page and you're looking at all this great stuff and you're like, wow, that's exactly what I need. Who are these people? Well, guess what? I don't want you going anywhere else but the submersible pumps page. So at the bottom of the site has a little bit about me, how to get a hold. And then it has a small contact form, and someone goes, well, I already have a request a quote page. That's fine. But guess what? At the bottom of their phone, they see a small little quote form and they're like, oh yeah, let me just fill this out and get some more information about the submersible pump. So you're designing your website now for both the target market, and if they're in the field or in the office, your website needs to reach them.
Awesome. Okay, I got another question for you. What can we do to update our site for third-party cookies going away?
Um,
I'm informed.
there's a lot of, California's got a new law. There's a new thing going out with the UK about cookies and a lot of that kind of stuff. What you need to do is look at your customers. I mean, and look at how they view the site. And so when it comes to cookies and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of stuff you can do with Google Analytics. There's a lot of other tracking programs that are out there where I think people are getting this big brother of, we're going to track you around. And then when you're on Facebook, we're going to show you a submersible pumps ad, which is called retargeting. And then when you go look at CNN, and then when you go look at, cars.com, the same pump page is going to, show up. Who started that is the car dealerships. The car dealerships did it because they figured they got to show you that car like 17 times before you actually think about buying it. So everywhere you went on the web, you kept seeing this Ford F-150, and now pumps are doing it. And I think people are just getting a little tired of it.
When we first started
when you go to eBay and all of a sudden this thing pops up about, whatever you were looking at, I'm like, really? Okay, I gotta go play my cash.
I remember when we first started doing that. I was going back and forth with Carter, which he'll be talking about a little bit of that. But I was going back and forth because I'm like, I'm not sure I want to do that. But as an advertising agency portion, like the Empowering Brands arm, you have to know how to do it for the customer. But to your point, if we're not using cookies and we're not tracking people in advertising, then how are you going to generate leads, right? And so you're going to use valuable content with lead gen forms and collect those type of leads. So I think there's approaches for that, but to your point, you have to make sure that you know what your audience is doing and how they feel about that as well.
It is because what you're looking at really is, especially with this senior buyer retiring, the people who are taking their place are used to being online. They have social media. Mel probably wasn't on social media, didn't know what LinkedIn is, probably still uses Internet Explorer, which I don't support anymore. I don't know how you're even seeing websites in Internet Explorer. But I mean, I went to visit a client and he's like, I have to do this when I look at websites. I go, yeah, because you never changed your screen from 800 by 600. So it's a real education. I mean, on everything that's going on, and web is just so important nowadays. Like Michelle talked about, people want to get the content, but they don't want to always hear about you. You don't need 7 drop-down menus under the About Us.
Right.
People don't care. It's like, okay, I need this submersible pump. I need it delivered on next week. Can you do that? Oh, by the way, who are you? And I don't need mission and purpose and team, because here's another tip for you. The people who go to the About Us page are the people who don't know who you are.
Yes.
The people who you currently do business with could care less about your history. Yeah. They just want the pump. They want the pump to work, and they want to know if it's on back order or if you can deliver it.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's go into your book. Okay, so yeah, and I've seen it. I guess it was a couple years back. I believe so.
I'm actually working on the new one for 2021, but yes, there it is. It's 52 tips to turn your website into a sales machine.
I have mine on my shelf back here. So, okay, so 52 tips to turning your website into a sales machine. All right. So give us a couple that we can take away, and then definitely put the link to that in the chat as well.
Okay. So here's the one, since I know, because I asked people on LinkedIn if they have any questions, and there's a lot of distributors out there who represent a lot of different manufacturers. So here's my tip on, we do not link to the manufacturer's page anymore. Okay, we don't just put a bunch of logos on the website and say we rep these people and then link to them, because guess what? It's your customer. It's not SPX Power Teams. It's not Wilco or whatever. It's your customer. So your customer is on your site. Keep them on your site. So if you need to, put the information. Call up SPX Power Team or another manufacturer and get the information from them and put it on your site. But don't just link away, because what happens is when I link to the manufacturer, I don't know if the manufacturer sells direct. I don't know if the manufacturer has a list of all the authorized distributors, and maybe you're on the list or maybe you're not, but don't link away, because that is your client first, and you just gave them to somebody else. And how many times do you go to a site and then you go, oh, look, it's about to rain. I need to figure out how I'm going to carpool with my daughter and their soccer team. And oh, wait a minute, I need to order Chinese food. So guess what? The money that was supposed to go to you just went to Panda Walk down the street because she just decided she needed to order dinner. So that's why I don't do external links. I want my customer to stay on my site.
I love that. And I think that, just looking for, the ways that we get our customer on the site, engaged with us. What do we want them to do? You've got to think about that. You need to think about that with really every piece of content that you have is what do you want that, consumer to do with that? Like you said, not buy dinner, but engage with
Yeah,
that.
buy my submersible pump. Don't go to Panda Walk down the street.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I think
one
also,
question,
like what you were talking
Michelle.
about and what Michelle was talking about is have a clear path. Once you give them information about the submersible pump, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to fill out a quote request form? Are you the manufacturer of the pump so you don't sell direct, so they need to go to your distributors? Give them an easy, clear path and they will take it, because once a confused buyer gets confused, they leave.
Yeah. So Michelle's got a question here about what's the best advice for building backlinks, which she understands was good for SEO, but if we're not creating those links, or how should we create links on the site then?
Backlinks are always interesting. I mean, you can go to Fiverr and buy 10,000 backlinks tomorrow, and I would definitely not do that. But I would, like Michelle talked about, know your competitors. You can actually use a software to find out what backlinks your competitors are using. So if you're in the submersible pumps business and you got a very large competitor, you can use some tracking software to figure out exactly what their backlinks are, and then look and see if there's a way for you to get the backlinks.
So strategically picking out these links that you're going to have. So
yeah,
just
and
in general,
a good definition of backlink is a site is linking to you, which has more of a page rank than you do. Sorry about that. Basically, a backlink is linking from another site to you that has good audience. And so, if like for you, I mean, you have a website. There's other websites that are out there that talk about products. You can actually do something with media, like Oral Online or Petroleum Products and Solutions. You might ask them or write an article and see if there's a way you can get a backlink from them.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Look for credible sources that are ranking higher than you, and get them to link for you. I think that I was just actually going over that with my team this week to look through that and make sure that we are, going through our articles and linking to the product, and that we want people to go to and see for the client. So ours is a little bit different because we're driving people back to the manufacturer site that way.
Yeah, because people always ask me, they always look at the background and they go, what's the sock puppet up there? And you know what that is? That's the pets.com sock puppet. Nice. Because back in 2000, we always thought pets.com, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, who's going to ship a 50-pound bag of dog food through the mail? Well, guess what? Now there's a whole nother company that does it a whole lot better, but things change, so I keep the pets.com sock puppet just as a reminder that how fast things have changed. I mean, when I started in the business, we built websites because they were, you had to have a website to have a presence. And then they became this Hollywood production where you would walk on the website and go, hi, click this button here if you'd like this information. And we used to shoot those walk-on videos. And now it's become this lean, mean, totally responsive machine that directs the information specifically to the person who's coming to the site.
Yeah. And I think that that's something to point out when we're thinking about our website. You said it, that responsive site is so important, and like looking at the difference. So as you're building it, if you're building it and you're talking with the web guy or girl and then building it out and saying, okay, this is what it looks like on my desktop, but you've forgotten to look at your phone at all, then you're going to miss some things. And so making sure that you have that as part of that process, that you realize that people are not going to just look at this size phone. They're going to have tablets. They're going to have, different devices out in the field. How is this going to play in what you design? So I'm excited that everybody has you as a resource, and that you provided us some things to think about when building our sites and providing content. One more tip that you want to give us before we leave?
Yeah, let's just see. Pick a number between 1 and 52.
Oh gosh, 32. That's our favorite number.
32.
I should have looked.
Okay, well, we just did that external link, so we'll go to we'll go to 29. Keep it a secret. Remember that there's a lot of different audiences that are coming to your website. There's competitors, there's potential employees, there's past employees, there's customers, there's current customers. Don't put information out there on the site that you're afraid that you don't want your competitors to know about. Because I'll bet you when you redesign the site, the second person coming to your site will be your competitor. And they're going to look at all the information and they're going to determine if that information is good enough for them to put on your site. So put enough information that you can get that person to fill out that contact us form or fill out a quote request form, but don't put so much information on there that you give your competitive advantage away.
Great tip. Great tip. Watch those competitors. Sometimes they show up when you.
And then, like I tell people, I go, if you're going to put a contact form on there, follow up. You know, go to it, send it to an email. If you fill out a form at upstreammarketing.net, which is my site, it goes directly to my phone. So I know that, hey, I need to contact this person back. It doesn't go to an email like sales at that I never check because of spam. If you're going to have a contact form on that website, follow up, because 3 things happen that I assume. When I fill out the form, I'm like, 1, nothing's going to happen. No one's ever going to contact me. 2, I'm going to get stuck on some stupid newsletter list that I can never get off. Or 3, let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden you get a call back and says, thank you very much for visiting our site. Not an automatic generated thing that I hate, because that means you're not going to follow up with me anyways. But somebody that says, thank you for being on our site the last couple of minutes. How can we help you about this submersible pump? I guarantee you your competitors are not answering that quickly. And that's a great competitive advantage, is if you have a contact form, follow up as soon as possible.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. See, 2 great tips already. So check out his book.
Yeah, so don't give your money to another customer who's going to a Chinese restaurant down the street. Don't link outside your website unless it's almost necessary. And make sure it's responsive for everybody who's viewing it in the field or home, or wherever they are now.